by the end of the night, I was thinking, what is wrong with me? How did this not happen? Why didn't this work out the way it's supposed to? And bless his heart, Todd was like, are you okay?
You're listening to Get Your Marriage On, the fun and spicy podcast bringing you new tools and fresh ideas so that you can be the sexiest couple you know.
I'd like to be part of changing the stigma around talking about sex and marriage. I've personally gained so much from courageous couples opening up to me in appropriate ways, of course, how they've found deeper connection and joy in their sex lives. So far in this podcast, we've generally interviewed experts in marriage or sex-related careers in one degree or another. Anyway, I want to switch gears for the next 3 episodes. Rather than learn from professionals, I want to share stories from real, ordinary couples about how they've transformed their marriages into something extraordinary. Their stories are real, raw, vulnerable, and inspiring. These 3 couples talk about mindset shifts that led them to better sex. We'll call this, a Sextimony series. So, our first Sextimony is from Sharon Williams. She talks about shifts that help her realize she can be in charge of her pleasure and how it's changed sex from a chore to something she absolutely looks forward to. Be sure to read her award-winning essay called Bridging the Orgasm Gap, which captures her journey of learning how to get what she wants in the bedroom. Since our interview, I've read her free downloadable ebook called 10 Tips for Bridging Your Orgasm Gap, and I recommend it to you too. You can find both at her website, SharonLeeWilliams.com. All right, let's jump right in. Sharon, welcome. Welcome to the podcast today. How are you?
I'm great, Dan. Thank you so much for having me.
Great.
Good to be here.
Well, let's dive right in. Let's start with a little bit of foreplay. What's the craziest thing you and your husband have ever done together?
The craziest thing. We've been married 24 and a half years, and the craziest thing we have done is play in an amateur rock band together.
No way. That's fun.
I took guitar lessons several years ago. I started taking lessons, and then I worked myself up to the adult rock band program. And so I was playing guitar, bass guitar, and singing. And Todd plays piano professionally, so he joined in on the keyboard.
Nice.
It was a blast.
Nice. Yeah. What's the name of your band?
Well, we were a band.
Uh-huh.
We're not together anymore.
Uh-huh.
And the name of our band was Studio 11.
Nice. Very good. Very cool. Well, that's great that you and I have gotten together. We've banded together for this podcast episode for today. I love your story, and I hope more people will hear about it today. And anyway, I just want you to tell me, what do you love about Saturday mornings?
Oh, what do I love about Saturday mornings? Todd and I have historically been not night owls. We kind of turn into pumpkins later in the evening. So sexually speaking, mornings are best for us. And of course, Saturday morning, he's not rushing off to work. We have all the time in the world to have fun and play. And so it's Saturday morning it's kind of written in stone, not in a mean or bad way, but we just both prioritize it that highly. If something comes up, an opportunity to do something, or it has to be something so super important for us to say, sure, we'll do that, rather than have our Saturday fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
Have you always been that way?
We mostly have enjoyed sex in the morning, but we made it kind of more solid and official in recent years. Like, this is it, Saturday mornings, that's for us. Nothing else, unless there's a good excuse.
Oh, right. Traveling or whatnot. But that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me about your expectations of sex going into marriage, and how is that different than what your Saturday mornings look like now?
I had so many expectations. We both did going into marriage. We can call it sexpectations.
Right.
So many sexpectations for both of us. neither of us had had intercourse before marriage. So really kind of most of what we knew about married sex was what we saw, on TV or in movies. And, that's just so realistic, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
not at all.
Not exaggerated at all.
No.
Or scripted.
No. Right. So we both came into marriage thinking that intercourse would just be kind of effortless. It would always be fun and amazing. We would both orgasm, and we would just be having sex all the time and just having a grand old time every time. But it took day one for those expectations to be like, no, that's not it at all. We actually went to sleep our wedding night, both never having had intercourse still.
Just exhausted from the day's events, probably.
Yeah. And not that we didn't give sex the old college try. We tried and tried, but it's, when you think, oh, it's just a matter of putting tab A into slot B, and you suddenly have magical fun.
Right.
It's not actually that easy, and especially not after an exhausting day. So we were immediately disappointed, honestly. The wedding night was, we were, of course, so excited just to be together finally. Spending the night in the same room was a big deal, and it was wonderful. But we were really disappointed that we just couldn't get it right.
Gotcha.
It didn't work like it was supposed to.
Was it just a little distressing at the time too?
Very, yeah. I was, in fact, we both were thinking, Todd was clearly aroused, but it was like the penis just wouldn't go in. And so it was like, wait, what's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with me? Am I broken? Am I doing something wrong? So I, by the end of the night, I was thinking, what is wrong with me? How did this not happen? Why didn't this work out the way it's supposed to? And bless his heart, Todd was like, are you okay? Do you think you need to see a doctor? I was like, I don't know, maybe. I don't know what's wrong. But we were immediately thinking, what's wrong? So very disappointed. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then what happened?
Well, we carried on with the honeymoon, and we eventually figured it out. We were able to get some rest, and intercourse did eventually happen. But still, it wasn't the fireworks and all that we were
the
thinking.
Earth shaking, like stars aligning.
Yeah. Or at least not for me. It was, I was still thinking that I would have an orgasm with intercourse alone. So that was another, sexpectation that just didn't pan out right away, which was, again, confusing and discouraging, and like, what is wrong with me kind of thing. But we at least got the intercourse part worked out, and we didn't really talk about it, of course. Communication about sex, that wasn't in our skill set. So it was not till about 17 years later that we both finally got help.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
So what happened around year 17? That's like, I got to take care of this. I want to fix this.
Yeah. Well, Todd has always been better at communicating in general in our relationship. And so I was learning a lot about just communicating in life and about feelings and stuff from him, which is wonderful. But I still just struggled for all those years to really express my true feelings about things, not wanting to hurt his feelings or,
right. And
we've been
egos get in the way, and
just get in the
yeah,
way.
you're married with someone. You don't want to like ruffle their feathers, right?
Right,
Uh-huh.
right. Yeah, we want to keep it nice,
And
don't
we gotta
we?
keep it. Oftentimes, we want to be on the safe side too, and
Right,
sometimes safety precludes intimacy, because
exactly.
intimacy sometimes means going out on a limb, and you might offend, or the other person might take offense to what you say, because
Right. And
you're letting your true colors show, which is an intimate act, but that can be scary sometimes. So many couples like choose the safe side instead, and then the marriage gets boring or
exactly.
ordinary. Uh-huh.
Right. And to your point, it takes risk. It's risk taking, making yourself vulnerable, just sharing your feelings in general, but especially about sex. Um, so yeah, it took us a long time. And over that time, I was feeling some resentment starting to grow because Todd was not a mind reader. He didn't know what was what I was feeling or thinking, just in general. And so I really hit a wall in our relationship, and at about year 17, I think, and just didn't handle myself well. And so it was very clear at that time that we needed help. So we started Christian marriage counseling, and we were there for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was truly, that was the very first turning point for us, of like really growing up and learning about each other, learning who we are, how we came to be the people that we were, and how we came to become the couple that we were, and how we need to change things to make things better going forward.
You talked about how you didn't handle yourself very well. Can you elaborate on that? What was that like?
Oh boy. I did feel that resentment, and just feeling like, gosh, marriage is not really all I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so I I made some bad choices, and was like, this is not good. We got to get some help. And so uh, you hate to see a relationship get to the point where you have to have counseling,
Right.
but I'll just be forever grateful that we did get to that point, because it led to change.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't go the way we were, so we had to make change. So
Great.
yeah.
So you find a good counselor. Did you reach out to the counselor first, or did Todd reach out to the counselor first? Like who was the more driving force about we need counseling?
We both knew we needed counseling, and I knew that here in New York there was one Christian counseling group. Well, I know there was more than one, but one that was well known to me, Redeemer Counseling here in the city. And so I was just like, all right, I'm going to call and just say, we got to get in. We need help. And Todd was, of course, right on board with that.
Great.
So,
Great.
yeah, that year in counseling got us really on the track of, just like I said, understanding ourselves and understanding each other better, and so that we could build a foundation for growing in a more healthy way.
Was the counseling specific on the sexual relationship, or more on the marriage as a whole?
It started, it's kind of a mix of both, because you really can't have a healthy sex life if your relationship is not going well. So we had a lot of learning to do in both areas, the relationship outside the bedroom, the relationship in the bedroom. We had a lot of learning to do.
So what are like 2 or 3 of like the big ahas for you during this time when you're really working on yourself and working on your relationship?
we got to give each other a lot of grace,
Uh-huh.
a lot of grace and forgiveness. And we learned how to actually speak up and talk to each other.
All right. Uh-huh.
And knowing kind of where we've come from, our families of origin, understanding how we each came to be and how we came to be.
Mm-hmm.
So was really helpful. So after we got through counseling, I felt like I needed more. A year is not quite enough, but it was enough. So I started finding other resources like podcasts and that really Christian marriage and sex podcast, which I didn't know were out there.
Right. Uh-huh.
It was like 2015. I think maybe when they were just really taking off. And so I found Sexy Marriage Radio was the first podcast I found.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, Shannon Etheridge was the co-host with Corey Allen. And I was like, oh, I love this woman.
Uh-huh.
Learning so much. And so I found her book, The Sexually Confident Wife. And that was the first marriage book and, sex book I had read. And that really just started me on the road to just thinking, well, what other resources are out there?
That's good.
I now need to read everything.
Right. Uh-huh.
Listen to every Christian marriage and sex podcast there are.
What were some of your big ahas reading Shannon's book that you remember at the time?
Gosh, it's been a while since I read her book. But I remember she did talk about body image.
Uh-huh.
And which was, one of many hangups I had. And since then, I've heard people say, you can't have good sex when you're worried about your abs jiggling. Or,
right.
So, a lot of things I needed to reflect on to become more sexually confident. And really, I started realizing how much I did not know about sex and marriage. I mean, I went how many years without knowing that most women don't actually orgasm during intercourse.
Uh-huh. Was that a revelation to you? Like, what? No one told me this.
Exactly. When was that? I think that was about 2015 or 2016. I think it was actually maybe Sexy Marriage Radio when I learned. I was like, wait, what? This is normal? I'm normal? Are you kidding me? How has the world been holding out on me?
Right.
Why not have this information?
It took me 13 years of marriage before I learned that. I'm like, how come no one told me this?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, things would have been so much better had I understood.
Exactly.
Because we receive a sexual education, even in school from parents, but it's usually on the reproduction side.
Right.
And maybe health and safety, and of course, abstinence education. But you don't get the pleasure side and how to build a great sex life. What's it mean to be erotic? Exactly. What's it mean to be like we have a spiritual self, a physical self, intellectual self. What about our spiritual self and discovering that and embracing that as unique as our personality and our tastes and preferences are unique? Like no one talks about that.
Exactly. Pleasure, like, oh, is that a topic we can talk about?
Right. Uh-huh.
And how to get that.
Uh-huh. Like, it's out there kind of, because otherwise it wouldn't be in movies and love songs. But like, what does it really look like, and how do you get there? Like, what are the mechanics of it? Like, no, that's kind of missing from a lot of.
Exactly.
You have a lot of gaps.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of the orgasm gap, I just thought everybody was having orgasms. I thought all women,
except you, of course.
Except me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I thought, well, everybody must be just having a grand old time in their marriage. All these wives, they're probably just having sex all the time and having a great time at it.
Uh-huh.
For me, so I never brought it up with my friends or anything, and nobody else was talking about it. So I was just living in the dark for an awful long time.
So you start finding podcasts like Sexy Marriage Radio, and
Yeah.
then you start getting your hands on any book you can, and you start learning more. So tell
Yeah.
me more about how did your relationship change? How did your relationship to yourself change? Your relationship to your husband change? What was that transition like?
Um, I was excited about what I was learning, but I didn't really know how to put it into practice, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So that took time. You don't just go through many, many years of ignorance and then suddenly you're like, oh, I'm normal? Well, okay.
Uh-huh.
Now I'm just gonna have fun all the time.
Right. Uh-huh.
But really learning how to put these things into practice, listening to Sexy Marriage Radio and, realizing that I needed to actually speak about what I wanted and what I liked. And, you know, I can't expect Todd to be a mind reader.
Uh-huh.
Just because we're married doesn't mean he can read my mind. So I had to start speaking up.
So you told me earlier that one of your big ahas was my husband isn't responsible for my orgasm. I am responsible for my orgasm. And that shift in thinking changed the way you experience pleasure in sex for yourself. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, I would be happy to. As I was just getting my hands on more information and learning more about myself and about my body and pleasure, I was like, I really want to have more of this.
Uh-huh.
But actually, before I got to that point, I had been struggling for many years with chronic pain in areas of my body, like my feet, which affected my whole body.
Uh-huh.
And that still is an issue today. And then I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2018. So that just added to my pain.
Mm-hmm.
But I was at the same time, this was after counseling. So I was like, we were starting this path toward a better marriage and better sex life. And, pain is an issue. And then multiple sclerosis adds to the issue. And so
obstacles, right when we're on the right path, what are all these things in our way now? Uh-huh.
Exactly. And so when I came home from seeing my pain management doctor, she said, we need to find a way to make you comfortable. Stop having surgeries on your foot. Stop doing this and that. We need to just focus on how to get you comfortable. And that meant long-term, probably for the rest of my life, kind of
learning how to live with it. Right.
Learn how to live with pain. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I came home from that appointment, feeling good that we actually had a plan. But also I was just like, I knew that was going to include medications, which would most likely affect my libido and my ability to have an orgasm. And sure enough, that was true. But I prayed, maybe it was that day or soon after. And I was like, God, I don't want this to be like this forever. I understand that, I want pain relief, but what can I do? Where can I go to get help? And literally just within a few days, I was just flipping through a Good Housekeeping magazine, and there was an article about sex, really small article. And I was reading, and there's a sex therapist. She had some quotes in there. I was like, well, that's really good. And I saw that, oh, she's in New York City. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I Googled her right away, and I had an appointment with her the very next week. And I think other than our marriage counseling, going to see a sex therapist in particular was the biggest shift in my thinking and in making improvements at just period at all.
Oh, cool.
to be able to speak honestly and openly about what was going right and wrong and how I felt about it, that was completely foreign, you know. And so to have her compassionate ear listening, and I could say literally anything, and she didn't think it was weird.
Yeah. She's heard it all. There's nothing new, you can tell her.
Nothing new. And so that was just such a huge comfort to know that, you know, I was normal, and she gave me lots of tools to put in my tool belt, so to speak, and teaching me again how to communicate my needs and desires with Todd was a huge piece of that. So and knowing that, you know, this pain journey was going to last a while, and then being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis a couple years later, I was back in her office. I was like, "No, I have MS. What do I do?" She's like, "It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay." So she just encouraged me. She listened to me, and really, at that point, I started thriving in sex rather than just getting by or making things better. It was just like, boom, I'm gonna take this and thrive. Because I mean, I enjoyed sex, but I was not having, maybe once or twice in my life have I had an orgasm with intercourse. And, you know, it was usually, or always, if I had an orgasm, it was with manual stimulation, my husband. And so I knew I knew what I was capable of. Capable of having an orgasm. Just need to figure out the best ways to do that.
You had the hardware. Now you need the software.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chronic pain and MS seems like a pretty big deal. How have you and Todd worked through that together so you can still have a good sex life?
Oh, that's a great, really great question. Thank you for asking. It was scary at first, you know, knowing, well, I had experienced really intense pain before, you know, years ago when I had a car accident, and then had pain for 4 months that I couldn't even leave my apartment except just for going to doctor appointments. But then I saw a pain management doctor, and things really turned around for me and got much better. But I was still left with some pain that has carried on all these years, and especially some pain in my foot, both feet actually. And so that really, chronic pain just takes a toll on you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, everything. It led to a lot of depression and anxiety for me. Totally normal. But once I did get into pain management with non-opioid pain medications, it did turn me around, and getting good physical therapy helped as well. But then, you know, being diagnosed with MS just kind of took pain and fear to a whole new level. But, you know, that just having the love and support of Todd being right there with me. He went to all my neurology appointments because, you know, he wanted to learn about, you know, what's happening and what do we need to do to take care of Sharon. And knowing that the medications I was going to be on, again, I said earlier, you know, this is going to be a long-term thing. And the medications are going to have side effects that are going to affect, you know, my libido and my ability to have an orgasm. Of course, I wasn't thinking that right at the beginning of, you know, but after like the trauma and drama of the multiple sclerosis diagnosis, I was then able to think, okay, how's this going to work out in life? How are we going to do things? You know, how with all the pain that's in my hands from MS and the fatigue and also struggling again with depression and anxiety, those are not the makings of a great sex life. But I just can't stress enough how much help I've gotten from my pain management doctor and the non-opioid pain medications that she's given me, and physical therapy has just helped me live. And also, like I said, I just wanted to start thriving as well in our marriage and in sex. And so I actually became really determined to okay, I'm kind of balanced out. I'm stable with my MS. I understand what's happening. My pain is where it's at. And I'm accepting that. And now let me get back to the task at hand with our sex life. So I would really like to encourage people who experience chronic pain. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your marriage. Don't give up on sex. Sex doesn't have to just be intercourse. It can be, but it can be so much more than just intercourse. And there's still great sex to be had, even in the midst of chronic pain and chronic illness. So then I'll get back to your question now. You're asking about taking charge. I had forever been thinking when we were having sex, or when he would be giving me hand stimulation, I'd be like, oh, I wish he'd go a little left, a little right, or a little slower, a little faster, but never actually speaking any words. Again, just wishing he would read my mind. And so that was going on for years, and he just was never reading my mind. And I was like, okay, I can either choose to do something or just let this go on. And so I had a conversation. I said, this is something I've been thinking about. I'm interested in trying to give myself pleasure during sex, but I'm really, really, really nervous. I'm really embarrassed. That scares me. And imagine those few sentences took 5 minutes for me to get out of my mouth.
Yes. Very anxious conversation.
Yeah. But I was like, this is something I really want and need. And but I said, but I'm really nervous. I'm embarrassed. I'm shy. He said, well, you shouldn't be. Meaning, well, you shouldn't be nervous. You shouldn't be shy. It's, sometimes he's a man of few words. He's like, well, you shouldn't be. And I was like, okay. Good to know. Good talk. So it took weeks and months really before I was actually starting to give myself pleasure during sex, meaning touching myself during sex. Right. And that was one of the biggest turning points for me, taking charge of my own orgasm. Absolutely.
I think a lot of couples have a similar concern about touching themselves during sex.
Sure.
But when you zoom out and really think about it, when you have sex with another person, whether they're touching you or you're touching you, you're either using their body or you're using your own body for the same outcome. Even, I don't mean to get too graphic, but even penis and vagina intercourse for a man, he's basically using her body to masturbate. It's coupled, it's together, and there's a bonding element with it. But you can get the same bonding element if it were, a different type of a sexual behavior too. So for a wife to choose, I want to be close to you and experience pleasure and touch myself, versus you touch me, I think who's doing the touching matters less. It's the vulnerability. I think it might be even more vulnerable to touch yourself in front of your spouse sometimes too.
1,000%.
Yeah. And it's the vulnerability, it's the openness, it's the sharing of this is me, this is who I am sexually, and you're the only person I want to share this with. Like that is some beauty in that. But you can't get there until you have a self to share at
Right.
all. And that's what I love about your story is you grew out of you grew into a stronger self so that you could, I want to share. I want to do this.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you said it that way about it's just two bodies coming together, a husband and wife. And I've been thinking of it, it's like there's two bodies, there are four hands here. It doesn't matter whose hand is where doing what to who, as long as we're both having a good time, I think we're doing it right.
You're right. Good.
So it just doesn't matter if my hands are on him or if they're on me, as long as we're both having a good time, we're doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm certainly much happier.
Uh-huh.
And not only that, but after a while, I think he might have been taking some notes.
Uh-huh.
Still notes, of course.
Because he got better.
Then he got better with with.
Well, he had a good teacher.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. And who knows me better than me to teach him?
Right.
So yeah, that was by far and away the most vulnerable conversation maybe I had ever had, and scariest conversation. But he was just so welcoming to have that conversation, and probably, I'm guessing he was very relieved because it meant, please,
pressure's off. Uh-huh.
pressure's off. I've been trying to give you a good time for years. But I don't mean that, of course we had a good time for many years, but had a lot of growing to do. I did, and we did. So
That's good. You hear about men that write or discuss their peak sexual experiences.
yeah.
And you read, so the far majority of when they describe their best sexual experience has very little to do with their own pleasure. It's about their spouse that they're with, their wife, and seeing them light up. So a lot of men take a lot of pleasure in knowing, it's not like it enhances the experience so much knowing that their spouse is also, having a good experience too. And that's not to put pressure on wives that, hey, you need to have a good time in order for him to have a good time.
Of course.
But I think it goes to show that when each of us, each individual in the marriage invests in our own sexuality and our own development, and we're sharing that together, it enhances the experience for everyone.
Yeah. I think Shannon Etheridge may have been the first one I heard say this. She said, nothing turns on a man like a turned on woman.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of has stuck in the back of my mind. And I'm just taking that statement to the bank.
That's good.
I'm believing it. And it's true. We both, Todd and I are both enjoying sex more now, 24 and a half years into marriage, than, my goodness, in any of those early days, or, even 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it gets a lot better, but you really have to be intentional.
Speak to being intentional and being turned on. Any tips for women that struggle with becoming that turned on woman? I think of many of our listeners are kind of in the same stage of life as I am. We have children, we work, we've got just a lot going on. If we're not doing one thing, we're being a taxi driver, taking our kids to practice, or just life just can get so busy. And for a lot of wives or husbands too, there's pressure and there's stresses, and it's so easy to make sex kind of low on the priority list, or even the thought of being turned on is kind of a foreign concept. But I do think our thoughts are powerful. Any advice, how do you channel your thoughts to become a turned on woman?
Oh boy. My sex therapist said it best, I think. She said, always keeping your pilot light going.
Okay.
So, you're not having sex most people aren't having sex every single day or multiple times a day. So what are you doing to keep that pilot light burning
Uh-huh.
in yourself and between you, the two of you. Um, for me, I know that sex is coming on Saturday.
Yeah.
So I like that security of knowing, okay, it's gonna happen Saturday, and maybe later in the week I start feeling a little more arousal, and I might send a couple texts to
Uh-huh.
Todd that they're, amorous or maybe a little
Little flirty.
sexy, a
Uh-huh.
little flirty, um, and just trying to keep it a little bit top of mind. Maybe because I'm a coach, I'm always reading about sex, so it is kind of always on my mind.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it's also making it a priority, just like we've cleared our calendar on Saturday. That is Todd and Sharon time. There's no rush. There's just the two of us. We have no deadlines usually.
Uh-huh.
But clearly that's coming from someone with no children. So I know that's an entirely different story for young parents or maybe older parents of teenagers, but I would say just working as a team together. I was just thinking of it today about getting ready for our discussion and reading. I went to 1 Corinthians 12 or 13. Love is patient, love is kind. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that is so key for me in our marriage. Kindness is just, it can't be overstated. Just saying please and thank you to each other,
Uh-huh.
being so just kind to each other. What can I help you do? Can I help you with that or this? Just to show some mutual respect and support for your busy or tired spouse, and just to keep that feeling of goodwill between you and building each other up and doing extra little special things when you can for each other. It just builds that sense of overall goodwill between you, so that it's not such a huge jump, on Saturday or whenever it is,
Mm-hmm.
to go from busy, chaotic, crazy brain parent to, okay, let's have sex and let's make sure it has a lot of meaning. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
we're both gonna orgasm and it's gonna be great. Let's go.
Uh-huh.
If you keep that pilot light going throughout the week, it really does help.
Anything else you want to share today?
Gosh, if I have a couple minutes, I had thought of this great analogy of speaking up for yourself.
Yeah.
I thought of this idea of, well, I watch a lot of HGTV.
Uh-huh.
I've seen thousands of houses being built on TV. And so if you can think of your marriage as like you're building your dream house,
Mm-hmm.
House is your marriage and you both want it to be the best it can be. And so you have to collaborate if you're building it together. Like, say you're building a new house,
Uh-huh.
and you have to collaborate on, well, what color are we going to paint the living room and dining room, or so you're constantly collaborating on building that house together. But, and say, I'll use myself as an example. If Todd said to me, honey, I want this space to be your closet. It's just yours. It's like the size of a small bedroom. It's your dream closet. What do you want it to be?
Uh-huh.
What he could say, I know you need space to hang clothes and you have a lot of shoes that you'll want to put in there. And so, like, that's him knowing me. He knows I have clothes to hang and he knows I have shoes I want to organize.
Uh-huh.
I say, oh my gosh, my dream closet? Are you kidding?
Uh-huh.
I would love to have space for both my in-season and out-of-season clothes to hang. I want little cubbies for my shoes. I want to have space to display my hats. I want to have a space for my belts, and I want to have a chandelier hanging in there to make it feel really special and feminine. And he could say, oh, do you want to, would you like it blue? Want me to paint it blue? That's your favorite color. Be like, oh yes, blue, that'd be great. So yeah, he knows me enough to know that I would like for it to be blue, and I want to hang clothes in there, and I want to put shoes in there.
Right.
Then I need to add my own personal touches. I wanted to have the space for my hats and belts, and I want to have a chandelier. So I'm putting those touches in myself. And he's like, that's great. It does sound like your dream closet. I would love for you to have your dream closet. Let's do it. So, he's the one paying for it in this case. So, we'll talk to the architect, but I'm speaking up for what I want. If he was just designing the closet, I'd just be hanging not even all my clothes, and I'd have some shoe space, which is good. I'd be grateful to have my own closet. But it would be even better if I speak up and say, oh, I want space for my hats and belts, and I want a chandelier. And so speaking up for what I want is the best way to get what I want.
Right. A good marriage has room for two.
Exactly. And that would be maybe a good example of, knowing how to give myself pleasure. I would love to have a chandelier. I would love to have my hats and belts organized, and those are my touches in my closet. How can I translate that to my body and into our relationship? I can actually speak up for what I like and what I need, and I can actually feel total freedom to touch myself, touch Todd. Teamwork makes the dream work. It's 4 hands in that bedroom, not just 2. So, teamwork makes the dream work there.
Good. I like that. Very good. And now you're coaching other women, which is so cool to hear. If they want to reach out to you, how do they find you?
Yeah, I've just begun my own coaching business. I'm a certified life coach and certified health coach, and recently got my master's in human services counseling last year. And so
you're not taking this lightly, are you? You're all in.
All in. This is the biggest. I wish I could shout it from the rooftops. You're normal, women, ladies. You're normal. And let me help you.
And there's great pleasure to be had.
Great pleasure to be had, even if you've been through many years of not so great stuff. So yeah, I definitely want to help women and couples, have more confidence in the bedroom, more confidence in communicating about sex, and I have found that the better I've become at communicating about sex, it has translated across all areas of marriage. I'm better able to speak up about anything in our marriage, about decisions, about, so many things. So you do have to have that base of, having a good relationship to contribute to a good sex life. And then they both just feed on each other. And I would love to do that for other women and couples.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on today. This is a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Get Your Marriage On. And if you did, we would love it if you would take a few seconds to give us a rating on iTunes and to share the show with your friends. They'll thank you for life. Once you've done that, you can head over to getyourmarriageon.com for more resources about today's topic and to download our amazing marriage apps. Now go get your marriage on.